Spanning almost 40 years and with nearly 30 titles across various Nintendo consoles, The Legend of Zelda is one of the most popular video game franchises of all time and has cemented itself as the gold standard for action-adventure games. With all that success, it seemed only natural that a film adaptation would eventually come around. And it did. In November of 2023, it was revealed that Nintendo would be teaming up with Arad Productions and Sony Pictures to produce a live-action Legend of Zelda movie. The news was met with a whirlwind of speculation. Who's gonna star in it? What's the story? Will it be canon? And most importantly, can it even be done? Can Hollywood create a Zelda movie that does justice to the source material? Is such a thing even possible? And I'm here to tell you, yes. It most certainly is possible. Let me take you back to 1986 and introduce you to a little fantasy flick called Legend. Directed by Ridley Scott, the movie treats us to a breathtaking fantasy world filled with elves, fairies, goblins, and other mythical creatures. The story centers on a forest dweller named Jack, played by Tom Cruise, as he embarks on a journey to rescue a beautiful noblewoman and save the world from a monster in possession of an all-powerful, magical MacGuffin. Sound familiar? I thought so. Legend, in my opinion, could easily be a live-action Zelda adaptation, and that's what I want to discuss today. First, we're going to take a look at the movie, its story, characters, etc. Then we're going to compare it to the Zelda franchise and see where it could presumably fit into the timeline. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started. The movie begins with this primordial evil guy known as Darkness, played by the legendary Tim Curry. He orders one of his goblin minions, Blix, to slay the last of the unicorns and bring him their horns. These horns are immensely powerful magical items and will help Darkness achieve his ultimate goal of plunging the world into endless night. But there's a snag in his plan. Unicorns are very elusive. The most effective way to lure them out is by using bait. And in this case, the bait is innocence. Enter Lily, played by Mia Sara, the aforementioned innocence, who is frolicking through a sunlit forest. Unknown to her, she is being watched by Blix and Darkness's other minions. While visiting her friend, Nell, Lily has a grim hallucination but ignores it. We then learn that Lily is an aristocrat who escapes court life by visiting the countryside and interacting with the common folk, especially her boyfriend. Said boyfriend is our main protagonist Jack, played by Tom Cruise. He's a playful forest dweller who lives in harmony with nature. After he and Lily share a prolonged smash session, Jack reveals he has a surprise for her. He then leads her to two unicorns. They're secretly followed by the minions of Darkness, at which point we learn that unicorns protect the pure-hearted from evil. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but sure. Lily watches the unicorns in secret for a while, then decides she wants to touch them. Jack protests, but she refuses to listen and reveals herself to the unicorns. The stallion becomes curious and approaches her. Jack gets annoyed with Lily and leaves. Moments later, the minions of Darkness shoot the unicorn with a poison dart, causing it and the mare to flee. Afterwards, Jack chastises Lily for touching the unicorn. He says that such things are forbidden, as unicorns are sacred creatures. Then dark clouds suddenly begin to gather, and Jack senses something is wrong. And he's right. The minions of Darkness chase the unicorns through the forest, forcing them to separate. At the same time, Lily tries to console Jack by proposing a game. She says that all her suitors must overcome a challenge. She removes her ring, throws it off a cliff, then says whoever finds it gets to marry her. Jack immediately jumps off the cliff and into a lake in pursuit of the ring. While Jack is busy treasure hunting, it starts to rain, and Lily, realizing that throwing her ring off a cliff might not have been the best idea, is distraught, thinking that Jack has offed himself for love. All the while, the sky continues to darken. As Jack searches for the ring, the minions of Darkness corner the poisoned unicorn. Jack, sensing danger, tries to resurface but is trapped underwater. The minions of Darkness then cut off the unicorn's horn just as our hero frees himself. The death of the unicorn causes a snowstorm that plunges the entire forest into winter. A confused Lily flees through the wilds, unsure of what to do. She retreats to Nell's house and finds the poor woman frozen solid. Shortly, the minions of darkness show up. Lily hides from them as they ransack the house using the power of the unicorn's horn. The minions eventually leave, and Lily realizes that the incident with the unicorn is the cause of all this chaos. She blames herself for it. Jack searches the forest for her and nearly succumbs to the cold. But he's woken up by a fairy. He then meets a childlike elf named Honeythorn Gump, played by David Bennett, and his merry band of feyfolk. Gump interrogates Jack about the strange goings-on in the forest. Jack admits to showing Lily the unicorn, and Gump is less than pleased, since his actions indirectly thrust the world into chaos. Jack tells Gump that he did it for love, and Gump immediately forgives him. He even proposes a toast of elderberry wine, provided by a dwarf known as Brown Tom, played by Cork Hubbard. Jack, Gump, and several other feyfolk team up to search for Lily. Eventually, they come across the deceased unicorn and its mate. Jack approaches the surviving mare and apologizes to it. The unicorn tells Jack that the world will be forever cursed unless he can reclaim the stolen horn. To do that, the forces of light require a champion. Someone bold and pure of spirit. Gump decides that Jack is the person for the job. But first, Jack will need weapons. And luckily, Gump knows where to find some. Gump leads Jack to a cave where said weapons are hidden. But for some reason, he can't accompany Jack inside. Una, the fairy from earlier, played by Annabelle Lanyon, goes in his stead. Jack follows Una through the cave and soon reaches a chamber filled with treasure, along with a sword, shield, and a suit of armor. Una then reveals her true form to Jack, which resembles a real-life Cynthia doll. For some reason, she doesn't want anyone to know about it, so she swears Jack to secrecy. Maybe she's self-conscious or something. She then says she can be anything Jack wants her to be, even his heart's desire. Jack disregards her advances and claims the sword, shield, and armor as his own. Elsewhere, Lily is tailing the minions of darkness. She observes them in a cave as Blix goofs off with the horn's magic. Fortunately, darkness shows up to put a stop to the foolishness. One of the minions, Blunder, grabs the horn and tries to usurp darkness. But darkness isn't having it. He debows the horn, then summons a mummy that takes out Blunder. Darkness is angry because the goblins failed to slay both unicorns. He knows this because the sun rose. Had his minions taken out both creatures, the morning wouldn't have come. Until both unicorns are dead, Darkness's power will remain incomplete. So, he commands Blix to find the surviving mare and finish the job. Lily hears the whole plot and runs off. She stumbles upon Brown Tom, who's hanging out with the mare. Brown Tom scolds her for indirectly causing the end of the world. She apologizes, then warns him about Darkness's plan to kill the unicorn. Just then, the goblins show up. They attack Brown Tom, who, surprisingly, is no slouch in the fighting department. But he eventually falls to an arrow. With him out of the way, the goblins capture both Lily and the unicorn. Sometime later, Jack and Gump show up and find Brown Tom laid out in the snow. It turns out the dwarf, through the power of sheer stupidity, survived his brush with death, and he tells everyone about the encounter with the goblins. Jack and the others follow the goblins' trail to the edge of the forest. In the distance, they see the great tree, described by Gump as an ancient and evil sacrificial site. They believe that this is where Lily and the unicorn were taken. The path to the tree leads through a marsh littered with ancient ruins. Soon, Jack gets separated from his comrades and comes face to face with a swamp hag named Meg Mucklebones, played by Robert Picardo, and she has a hankering for human flesh. Luckily, she's a pushover. Jack draws his sword and lops her head off without any trouble. Pretty anticlimactic, but whatever. After reuniting with his friends, Jack clears the marsh and continues his journey to the great tree. The party soon falls down a tunnel. It empties them into a subterranean prison/cookhouse where they discover themselves trapped in one of many cells. Here, they find Blunder, who reveals himself not to be a goblin, but one of the Fey folk. He warns the party that their jailer, a demon cook, plans to barbecue them. They all hide as the aforementioned demon cook approaches. He finds Blunder and takes him away. Meanwhile, Jack and company contemplate their escape. Jack suggests that Una finds a key to their cell, revealing her secret in the process. Una then unveils her true form, which angers Gump for reasons. Una agrees to help Jack in exchange for a kiss. Jack consents and gives her the oral equivalent of a church hug. Una, naturally unsatisfied, uses fairy glamour to appear as Lily in hopes of enticing Jack to slob her down. Jack doesn't fall for it, which angers her, and she flies off. Gump is none too pleased that their best chance of escaping is gone, implying that Jack should have just taken one for the team. But surprise! Una returns with the keys anyway and frees Jack and the others. The party navigates the prison in search of Lily and the unicorn, eventually deciding to split up. Jack and Gump go together while Brown Tom and another dwarf named Screwball make up the B team. We see Darkness in his inner sanctum. He talks about Lily with an unseen presence he refers to as Father. Darkness is confused about his attraction to her, as if he doesn't have eyes and a libido. Father thinks it's because Lily has a pure soul that Darkness wants to corrupt. To accomplish this, Father suggests that Darkness seduces her to the dark side. Elsewhere, Lily is fleeing through Darkness's lair, trying to find a way out. Una sees her and tails her through a chamber filled with odd structures. Lily soon stumbles upon Darkness's inner sanctum. Una remains just outside the door and spies on her. Meanwhile, Jack and Gump traverse a series of catacombs where they're attacked by monsters. They heroically run away and press on. In another part of the dungeon, Brown Tom and Screwball stumble across the captured unicorn, proving that they're not completely useless after all. Good for them. Back in Darkness's inner sanctum, Darkness charms Lily with riches. As she drools over all the bling, a spectral dancer appears out of nowhere, startling her. It forces her into a dance, eventually merging with her and giving her a new set of clothes. Then Darkness pops up, and the sight of his sheer awesomeness causes Lily to faint. She soon wakes up and is terrified. Darkness lays on the charm, attempting to seduce her into marriage, which Lily refuses. Undeterred, he continues to try to turn her to the dark side. Jack and Gump catch up with Una at the door to Darkness's inner sanctum. Jack wants to rush in and save Lily, but Gump advises against it, claiming there's nothing he can do. They overhear Darkness's plan to slay the last unicorn and plunge the world into eternal night. He also reveals that sunshine is his greatest weakness. Hearing this, Jack starts to formulate a plan. Shortly afterward, he and Gump reunite with Brown Tom and Screwball. The dwarves reveal the location of the unicorn. In turn, Gump tells them Jack's plan to destroy Darkness. Jack and company go to the demon cook's lair and discover him and his sous chef fast asleep. They free Blunder, who is trapped in a giant pie. Then together, they start stealing huge pans that will play a role in Jack's plan. Unfortunately, Brown Tom and Screwball make too much noise, rousing the demon cooks. After a brief scuffle, the party manages to defeat the monsters, then begins the next part of Jack's plan. Acquiring a source of sunlight. This requires Screwball to transport one of the giant pans to the surface. Back in Darkness's inner sanctum, he asks Lily to sit and talk with him. But she proves difficult, which slightly annoys him. He starts waxing poetic about love, dreams, and all that crap, trying his best to woo her. Unfortunately for him, she can see through his deception. In another part of Darkness's stronghold, Jack and company are setting up the pans to act as mirrors to reflect sunlight. Back in the inner sanctum, Darkness has finally had it with Lily and snaps in anger. At the same time, the unicorn is being prepped for slaughter by goblins. Just then, Lily comes up with a plan to trick Darkness. She agrees to stay with him for all eternity. but he must let her personally slay the unicorn. Darkness, blinded by thirst, falls for the ploy like a moron. Our heroes observe him gloating over his perceived victory. Jack, Gump, and Brown Tom keep an eye on him while Una and Screwball put the finishing touches on the plan. Jack's squad watches on as Darkness and Lily prepare to slay the unicorn, the former of which is wielding the slain stallion's horn. Gump thinks that Lily has turned to the dark side and urges Jack to take her out, but Jack hesitates. He trusts Lily to do the right thing. And his trust is rewarded, for instead of slaying the unicorn, Lily cuts the chain binding it. Enraged, Darkness attacks her. Jack intervenes and the two start to fight. Jack struggles against Darkness until he ultimately manages to claim the unicorn horn. At the same time, Una and Screwball use the pan to direct sunlight into Darkness's lair. Jack stabs Darkness with the horn, injuring him, as sunlight races through the lair, reflecting off the pans Jack and company had set up earlier. Darkness is hit head-on with sunlight and is on the brink of defeat. But that doesn't stop him from issuing one last monologue. He says that he can never truly be defeated because there is no light without dark. Jack has heard enough of this pseudo-philosophical nonsense and strikes a final, decisive blow, sending Darkness spiraling into oblivion. The day is won. But all is not well. Apparently, Darkness placed a sleep spell on Lily that can only be broken by true love. Mighty convenient of him. Jack separates from Gump and the others and returns to the same lake from the beginning of the movie to retrieve Lily's ring, which he somehow knows will aid him in breaking Darkness's spell. Elsewhere, Gump reattaches the unicorn horn to the slain stallion's head. This magically resurrects the creature and restores balance to the universe. Darkness's spell is lifted, and Lily wakes up. Whether this is because of the unicorn's horn being returned or true love is anyone's guess. At any rate, the unicorns are reunited, and Jack and Lily run off into the sunrise as Gump and the other woodland folk wave goodbye. Everyone lives happily ever after. Or do they? So, that, my friends, is Legend. It's not a perfect movie, but it does enough things right to be considered a quintessential 80s fantasy flick. The story is serviceable, the characters are memorable, and the visuals are beyond gorgeous, even by today's standards. But is it comparable to Zelda? I think so. I'd even go as far as to say that with a few changes, this could easily be a live-action adaptation. Let's start with the characters. Obviously, Jack is Link. Dude even wears green. Being a forest dweller, he bears the closest resemblance to the Link from Ocarina of Time. Lily is a beautiful noblewoman who gets kidnapped by the big bad and has to be rescued by a hero with whom she has a special connection. Just like Zelda. Darkness could be Ganondorf, Demise, or perhaps even one of the dark interlopers mentioned in Twilight Princess. Gump is a Kokiri. And Una, well, you might compare her to Navi, but considering her thirst for Jack, she's more like Sprite from the Legend of Zelda cartoon series from the 80s. But the main characters aren't the only things this movie has in common with the Zelda franchise. There are more similarities. So, let's list off a few. The struggle for balance between light and dark is similar to Demise's curse, which binds him, the metaphorical darkness. Hylia, the metaphorical light. And the spirit of the hero in a never-ending battle. Then there's the Interloper War, which features a conflict between light and dark. There's a dungeon inside a tree, like in the original Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, and Twilight Princess. Unicorns are reminiscent of light spirits from Twilight Princess, and their horns are magical MacGuffins akin to Triforce pieces. On another note, a unicorn was featured in the Legend of Zelda cartoon series. Jack finds his sword in a cave, like Link in Zelda 1. Darkness attempts to corrupt Lily, similar to how Ganondorf possessed Zelda in Twilight Princess. Darkness wants to cast the world into darkness, comparable to the Dark World featured in A Link to the Past. The forest is full of magical creatures, similar to the Lost Woods, particularly the versions featured in Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. The demon cooks are pig-like creatures resembling moblins. The swamp Jack and his friends pass through en route to the Great Tree is like the Misery Mire from A Link to the Past or the Castor Wilds from the Minish Cap. Meg Mucklebones is similar to a wizrobe that tried to eat Link as he passed through the Misery Mire in the manga adaptation of A Link to the Past by Shotaro Ishinomori. Darkness, Ganondorf, and the Dark Interlopers all have an aversion to light magic. Lastly, Darkness can send phantoms of himself to do his bidding, like Ganondorf. I could keep going, but for the sake of time, let's skip straight to the main event. If Legend was a Zelda story, where would it fit in the official timeline? Considering everything the movie has in common with the games, I've come up with a theory. The story happens after Skyward Sword, the Imprisoning War, and the Interloper War, but before Ocarina of Time. Darkness is a dark interloper who managed to escape banishment, as well as an avatar of Ganondorf, the latter of whom is currently imprisoned beneath Hyrule Castle. His body has been physically twisted by malice over many centuries of life, while his actions are driven by his ingrained hatred towards the Golden Goddesses and the cryptic desires of Ganondorf. This is the father entity Darkness communicates with. Jack, who possesses the spirit of the hero, grew up as an orphan in the Lost Woods, alongside Gump and his Kokiri siblings. Guna could be a younger version of a great fairy, as her true form is similar to great fairies from the games. The Great Tree is probably not the Great Deku Tree, but instead, the Great Tree from Skyward Sword, which, in this story, became a sanctuary for good after Farron, the Water Dragon, flooded the Farron Woods to rid them of Demise's forces. The actual Great Deku Tree is hidden deep in the Lost Woods. In the centuries following Skyward Sword, the waters covering the Farron Woods receded, and Darkness moved in, corrupting the land, and establishing the Great Tree as his stronghold. His goal is to get revenge on the goddesses by casting Hyrule, or at least the Farron and the future Ordona provinces, given where the story takes place, into perpetual night. He can accomplish this by destroying the light spirits, who, at this point in the timeline, have assumed the form of unicorns. Ganondorf, on the other hand, wants revenge on Rauru and his descendants by infesting Hyrule with darkness and evil. When Darkness meets Lily, who acts as this story's reincarnation of Hylia, he feels an instant connection to her. This is due to Demise's curse, which forever binds the incarnation of his hatred, Hylia, and the spirit of the hero. Remember, even though Darkness isn't technically Ganondorf, he's still influenced by the latter, and is consumed by malice. Considering all this, his conflict and inevitable defeat at the hands of Jack and Lily seem inevitable. After Darkness is vanquished, Hyrule experiences a period of peace, until another incarnation of evil inevitably returns to continue Demise's curse. Not a bad theory. Not perfect. But I think it's fairly in line with previous Zelda storylines. However, there are still some unanswered questions. Firstly, where is the Triforce? Honestly, I have no idea. I guess it's wherever it was during the Age of Legends. Secondly, is the sword Jack finds in the cave the Master Sword? My answer is no. The Master Sword is likely hidden elsewhere. Probably in the remains of the Sealed Temple. And Gump, who surely knows its location, decided there was no time to retrieve it. Especially since there was no guarantee that Jack was indeed Hylia's chosen hero, and would even have been able to pull it from its pedestal. Regardless, I'd like to think that the sword Jack used wasn't some run-of-the-mill blade, but instead, once belonged to Hylia's original chosen hero from the era of creation. Same goes for the armor and shield. Seems more poetic that way. So, that's it. My examination of the Zelda movie that never was. If you've seen Legend and have other ideas about where it could fit in the timeline, go ahead and drop them in the comments. There are no wrong answers here. It's just a bunch of Zelda theorists theorizing. It's what we do. And if you enjoyed this video, I sincerely hope you'll like and subscribe so I can keep doing this for y'all. Teamwork makes the dream work after all. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.